everyone, it's Jessica from melifecoach.com, and today we have a little lesson on defense mechanisms for each type. Ouch. Okay, this one's possibly going to sting if you're paying attention. So let's talk about defense mechanisms. To start out, a defense mechanism is a behavior that we developed as children. Because when you're a kid, your parents, no matter how perfect your parents are, they cannot be perfect in the way you need them to be perfect. And so as children, sometimes we experience needs, conscious or subconscious, that aren't happening, and kids aren't able to communicate or articulate effectively what they need all the time. And so we develop these strategies that sort of soothe us or make us feel like we're getting what we need, or keep out what it is that is painful for us in those moments. So there are lots of defense mechanisms that psychologists use, and outside of the Enneagram, just in general. So these are generally, there is some variation amongst teachers, but these are basically the ones in Enneagram that you will hear most commonly for each type. But also, any human can do any of these. So if you are a human and if you're paying attention, you should definitely notice that at least one point in your life or more, you have done at least one of these. Now, you'll especially know your own type's defense mechanism. But also, Enneagram teaches that you're not just one type. It's not a static system, it's a dynamic system. So what that means is, even though you will be most familiar with the mechanism of your own type, you will also know the one on your wings, which is the numbers to your left and to your right. You'll know the one to your paths, to your growth path and your disintegration path, or whatever you want to call them. The two paths that you have lines to, your number has lines to in the Enneagram diagram. And also, if you have a sophisticated enough knowledge of the Enneagram to know your trinotype, also you will know the defense mechanisms for your trinotype. Sometimes they're harder to see because they're sort of covered up with other behaviors. But anyway, so this isn't to throw stones at people, but I also want to point out that everyone around you can easily see when you're doing this in real time. I think it sort of feels like your defense mechanism. Well, defense, right? It's defense. It's like an automatic defense. And it might feel like you're some sort of ninja and nobody knows this is happening, but you're self-deluding. We're only fooling ourselves. The people who know you best know that you do this all the time. They see it. I mean, just ask them, hey, have you ever noticed me doing this? How about, have you noticed me doing this in the last hour? Because you probably have, because that's what we do. So anyway, the point of these is to learn to observe ourselves doing them when they're happening, and then to ask ourselves, what's really going on? Why am I feeling it necessary to deploy this defense mechanism? I'm not a child anymore. I'm not helpless. As adults, we have agency, we have autonomy, we can learn new ways of being, we can prayerfully offer up our shortcomings, we can be strengthened by the divine, and we don't have to live in these weak states of fear and anger and sadness. We can offer these up to God and transform. But the first step is to acknowledge that they're happening, right? We have to confess where we're missing the mark. And we have to notice, oh yeah, I do this. When we're not willing to even take the first step, then there can't be any growth. So if you intend to use this for personal growth, the recommendation is to, first of all, just be honest. Yep, I do this. I mean, everyone does it. It's folly to think that you're some sort of exception. So anyway, I'll go through the list, and and we'll go through all 9. Okay, so type 1. Now remember, because context matters, what's happening with type 1s is they are anger types and they are somehow dissatisfied or frustrated with themselves or others or the world or the way things are. And all body types, 8s, 9s, and 1s, are somehow resisting reality. And a lot of times when it comes to point 1, the reality they're resisting can be their natural animal impulses. They resist their anger, so they don't acknowledge some of their emotions, and they also don't always think that their instincts are appropriate, so they spend a lot of time moderating and like disciplining themselves or trying to control their behavior. And so this leads them to have a defense mechanism called reaction formation, which means that, and this happens in an instant, but instead of acting out in a way or reacting in any moment in a way that they genuinely feel or think or believe to be true, they will automatically shift to the opposite of that. And that is part of because they have this strong inner critic, their super ego, that is telling them that their original reaction that they would have had is inappropriate. So they need to somehow manage it and come up with a more good reaction. And so they are trying to make themselves more acceptable or appropriate. So this can manifest in a few ways for type 1. It can be, a 1 can be jealous of you, so she compliments you. Oh, I love your hair like that. And it happens in a moment. And the 1, if she's paying attention, she can actually feel that jealousy in the moment, but then she'll shift out of it real quick because jealousy is bad, right? Because 1s are, the world presents as a moralistic framework to them and they're trying to stay on the good side of things. So this is anytime they believe their original reaction is inappropriate or bad, they will shift. You'll definitely see this with 1s being nice to somebody they dislike. That's a real common version of it. When they are angry, they will pretend like they're really happy. Now with 1s, so again, people can see right through this. Like the 1 might feel like he's somehow fooling everyone or he's becoming, he's made himself appropriate. But the truth is, people have BS detectors and they can tell when that's not really your real response. So reaction formation. This is presenting yourself in the opposite of how you actually feel in the moment. That's the most common defense mechanism for point 1. Okay, point 2. The defense mechanism is repression. Now let's talk about what's happening with 2s. 2s are heart types, and they're wanting to have relational connections to people, but especially important people or people they love or people they want to be in relationship with. So one of the ways that the world manifests to a 2 is that 2s come to believe that people like happy people, friendly people, supportive people, nice people, people who don't complain, people who don't have needs, people who aren't too clingy. So what that can lead to is a 2 will repress her own needs, her feelings, or her desires from herself even. So this one's tricky because this is hard to see in 2s because they will convince themselves that they don't have needs, but instead they will redirect their attention to the needs of the person in that moment that they are trying to connect with, and they will respond to those needs of that other person, but repress their own needs. And again, we said the 1 does this so she can be good or appropriate. The 2 is doing this because she needs to see herself as being helpful and serving others. So she's repressing her own needs to keep up her self-image of, I'm so helpful, I'm so loving, I'm so self-sacrificial. And that's why repression shows up for point 2. Okay, point 3, also a heart type. Let's talk about what's happening at 3 because it matters. The frameworks we live in matter. And what's happening at 3 is 3 does not want to feel like a failure. And specifically, threes want a successful image in the world that they believe others will approve and applaud and be impressed with, basically. So what can happen is when a three is trying to, and threes, because of this desperate desire to be impressive or to present as a successful winner, they spend a lot of time adjusting their image, trying to present an image to the world that is impressive. And part of how they do this is when they are in a circumstance where they want to impress someone, they will subconsciously take on that person's traits and behaviors and act like it's their traits and behaviors. And in doing that, they will sort of like become who they perceive that other person is. I don't connect to point 3 at all, but I have had many, many situations in life where I have had the experience of somebody who I know and love, who is coming from 3 space in the time they do this, say something to me that is like what I normally say, or like, you know, I'm a very specific person. We all are, right? If we're really true to ourselves, we have like specific interests and very specific things we do. And at various times throughout my life, I've had people who are point 3 who like we're hanging out, and then she'll tell me, I'll give you, like, let's just make an example up. Let's say I started skiing. Okay. I took up skiing. And I'm skiing all the time. And then you hang out with your friend who's a 3, and she's like, hey, so I've been skiing a lot. And you're like, you've been skiing a lot? I think I've been skiing a lot. But you've been skiing. So anyway, this one was helpful for me because I never knew what that was. I always thought that was so strange when I would experience that from a 3. Now it makes all the sense in the world. But it's an inability for them to stand in their own image because they feel like their own image might be considered a failure or not accepted or not applauded. And so they like mask or wear a costume of who or what it is they are trying to impress. Identification is that mechanism for point 3. Okay, point 4, another heart type. The defense mechanism here is called introjection. This is where people who are 4s, well, let's put it in the framework. Okay, 4s are also heart types. That means they're image types. They are trying to finally be loved and accepted for how unique they are. And they are very sensitive to rejection, and they are very sensitive to missing out on something special that it seems that everyone else has, but they didn't get. And as such, they're really tuned into people criticizing them. That's something, a lot of their attention goes to where they're not good enough, or where they're falling short, or where they don't have a skill set. So with introjection, what happens is somebody outside will critique a 4, and a 4 will subconsciously do a little switcheroo where she believes she's the person critiquing herself, and it wasn't that other person who had the idea first. Like the 4 is like, no, I already knew that about myself. Yeah, I'm really bad at that. I already knew it. And what this introjection does is gives the 4 some sense of control, where it's like, no, that person didn't reject me or my skills or whatever it is they're rejecting. It's me. I rejected myself. Because 4s are more comfortable with the idea of them rejecting themselves than they are having had rejection from the outside. It's also that 4s, they actually are very good at noticing their shortcomings. They're too good at it, actually. 4s really shortchange themselves in a lot of ways. They're already in the habit of seeing themselves often as not as fill in the blank as other people. And so this kind of just like continues on that pattern. And so it makes them feel like they're in control and people aren't rejecting them. It's making them feel like they rejected themselves first, and that's introjection. Okay, point 5, the defense mechanism is isolation. Now we have to switch the framework because now we're out of the heart types and we're into head types. Head types are fear types, meaning types 5, 6, and 7, each in their own way experience the world as quite uncertain, unpredictable, scary, not safe. And so they each in their own way have these mechanisms that make them feel safer in the world. For 5, that's isolation. So what happens at 5 is 5s do this little trick where they separate their emotions from their thinking. They can literally just operate out of cerebral capacity only and eliminate all emotions. And so when we say they isolate, they do physically isolate, meaning they can go out and live in the wilderness by themselves without other people, or, not come out of their homes, or that is a form of isolation, and that's true. But beyond that, they also isolate their emotions from other people and from themselves. So their cerebral capacities are used to give them this safety feeling of autonomy and agency. And it's like 5s are pretty much scared of their emotions. And so they just put their emotions over there in a box. And also this helps them to avoid feeling dependent on anybody or emotionally connected, or like anybody needs too much from them. So they isolate themselves. One of the things that 5s are really sensitive to is depletion, being depleted, having people want too much from them or need too much from them. So they isolate. And that is what happens at 5. All right, point 6. Point 6 is, again, this is another fear type. But one of the things that sets 6 apart, that the other 2 head types don't experience as much, is a much harsher self-critic. 6s are really, really hard on themselves, and they can be quite pessimistic about the world, about themselves, about circumstances, often seeing themselves as less than, which of course isn't true, but that's the feeling that they get. And their defense mechanism is projection. And in this behavior, 6s unconsciously attribute the emotions that they have, that they wish they didn't have, or the desires onto other people. And this helps them manage, it doesn't really, but it feels to them like this helps them manage their anxiety or their fears about being insufficient by blaming. And projection is pretty close to blame. And sometimes you'll even hear some Enneagram teachers use the word blame at point 6. It's like their problems and the things that are wrong are out there. They project everything out there. Also, it's like specific behaviors. So let's say there's a 6 and she doesn't like someone. She'll be like, I really don't think that girl likes me. And it's like, really? I think you don't like her. It's not that she doesn't like you. You don't like her. Or maybe in sports, a 6 might be like, well, she's really, really bad at playing soccer. She's really, really bad at it. And it's like, I think you're the one who's bad at it, not her. So it's like they... to avoid feeling negative about themselves, which Lord knows 6s do enough of to start with, they basically put their blame and their anxiety external, and this gives them a false sense of security. Again, that's an anxiety, that's an attempt to manage their own anxiety, because rather than deal with their own shortcomings and anxieties, they will project them onto others. 7. There's also sometimes more than one used for 7. Idealization, it's not usually used. It can be used, which is, of course, idealizing things, people, situations, oneself. And 7s certainly do that. Certainly do that. And again, 7s are also another head type, which is a fear type, which means 7s' defense mechanism is intended to manage their anxiety. Of course, it doesn't work, but this is what we try to do. So 7s, the better one, I think, is rationalization. And that's what you hear rather than idealization, which 7s do. But rationalization is probably, I think, a better one and taught by more Enneagram teachers, which is Basically, sevens want to do what they want when they want. And so, and often this is used to bypass boredom or avoid responsibility or commitment or something that's mundane or not, doesn't feel as exciting enough. Or, it's like sevens are good at starting things, but not so great at completing them. And so, in those moments when the seven is trying to shove down anxiety or hard emotions that are coming up, and what the seven will do is then try to like escape into something else fun, and they will rationalize that escape. Well, yeah, I had to stop doing that project because actually it was my internet connection was bad, so I had to actually stop doing the work on that project because the internet connection was bad. So that's why I had to go out and go on a bike ride. It's like, really? I think you just wanted to go have fun and you rationalized it. It can get more diabolical than that, though. Of course, all of these can be quite dirty in the way they're used, because often a seven will rationalize why they're treating you the way they're treating you. Like, oh, well, I wasn't dismissive. It's just that you said you were done talking, so that's why I left the room. It's rational. Basically, it's like the seven's pass to do whatever she wants. She just rationalizes it. And then it's like, you're the idiot. There's a little bit of, I think actually in most of these, there's a little bit of gaslighting going on too, right? It's like, no, I'm not the one isolating. You're the one. No, I'm not the one repressing my emotions. You're the one. We all tend to then try to gaslight as we try to deploy our defense mechanisms. I'm a seven, by the way. I'm not trying to be hard on sevens. I just know that one better. Because it's my home base. And I know that in the past, especially before I knew Enneagram, I could, when I didn't know that I was doing this, now I would like to think I'm more aware of it. Not only could I rationalize it, but then because sevens are so smart cerebrally and quick, very quick thinkers and very good with words, it's like I can make you think you're the crazy one. Okay, point 8, the defense mechanism is denial. 8s just deny. Whatever they don't like, they just deny it. Nope, didn't happen. Oh, remember when you did that? No, I never did that. No, you totally did that. No, I didn't. Okay. It's just a hardcore denial. Now we're back into body types again. And so what's happening in body types, remember, is they don't like the way reality is. Something about reality is making them angry, or they don't, they're not in control. They're not, and it might even be unjust or unfair. And so they are setting up boundaries to try to keep reality from being reality. So when we looked at point 1 earlier, the reality was, look, 1, you have certain instincts and feelings, but the one's like, no, I don't. I'm going to have the opposite. Okay. When you get to 8, another body type, what's happening here is somebody might say, hey, 8, I don't know if, are you sure you have the skills to do this? I don't know. I think all these other people have taken these courses and done all these things, and you're just jumping in there and acting like you have skills. And I think maybe you have a lot of ignorance on this topic. No, I don't. I know a lot about it. I know a lot. And you're like, so they're denying weakness. They're denying vulnerability. Basically in an attempt to make them to keep up this image they have of being strong and secure and unconquerable and in charge, when something comes their way that they don't like, they just flat out deny it. I think you could see this, and I'm not trying to be political, and I'm sorry, I'm going to talk about somebody who might make some of your hair stand up, but I think you can see this with Donald Trump, who's a type 8, in his fake news, right? Fake news. I'm denying that. Sometimes it is fake news, but sometimes there might be a nugget of truth in it. Whatever, either way. That's a good example of a type 8 who just slams the door no matter what. And then it's like, well, 8s are, remember, they're keeping out the world or the things that they don't want to be true. They just won't let in. They'll just deny them. Deny. That's what happens at point 8. Okay, and then finally we get to point 9. Sometimes some teachers for 9 will use dissociation, which is sort of just to unconnect, detach from again, reality, right? Because 9 is a body type. So what's generally happening at point 9 is there's some kind of disruption in their universe. It doesn't have to be with people. It can be a physical, like they might not feel well, or it can be people are arguing, or it can be it's too hot outside, or it can be they don't like what their neighbor is doing, what color the neighbor is painting the house. It's like just something is disrupting what the 9 perceives of as her harmony. And so sometimes they say she'll dissociate, and that's true, and 9s do that. But I think more often you'll hear narcotization, which is numbing her internal discomfort by turning to some sort of distractive, rhythmic behavior that she engages in regularly, that helps her to just like distract. So they're like routines that the 9 develops that so obviously narcotization means like a drug. So there's like a routine that serves as a drug for the 9 that she engages in anytime she gets bothered. I also know 9s who sometimes the routines are like, we've said this before, shopping or eating, or it can be something really silly like, I don't even know, feeding birds, or just some activity that you're like, you have a lot of other really important things to do. You're doing this right now. But also, 9s will sometimes also self-soothe with like singing. Like I've known several 9s who, when they're agitated, will start singing. That's a type of narcotization. It's like they're soothing themselves by trying to like calm themselves, humming or singing, or if they're musical, that can be something they turn to. So again, that's how they're avoiding dealing with anything they're perceiving as a conflict, or anything that's stressing them out, or anything in reality that they don't agree with. They will use narcotization. Okay, we made it. We made it through all 9. And again, you should have at least known the one for your number. Okay, if you didn't, keep self-observing, right? Like that's the thing. Or even if you're serious about doing self-work, ask somebody close to you, somebody who's nice, who's not going to like beat you over the head with a frying pan about it, if they recognize that behavior in you, whatever the mechanism is, because we all have these. And again, the key would be to catch yourself in the act of doing this. And then ask yourself, if you're a body type, it's like, what reality am I resisting? What do I need to just accept as reality with serenity right now? If you're a heart type, you're doing this to create an image that can connect you to people and make you loved and adored. And it's like, wait a minute, I already am loved and adored as I am. I don't have to achieve or present in a certain way or be a unicorn. Or if it's a head type, 5, 6, or 7, it's anxiety. It's you are safe in this moment. You are held. You will be taken care of. You will be able to deal with your feelings and anything that comes your way in life. If you stay connected to source, you can make it through. So you don't have to keep trying to do these goofy behaviors that, like I said, everyone in the room can see. But instead, maybe try a new path. Okay, thanks for watching.